Welcome back, boxing fans. So the debunking of JB continues. And it's ironic, no matter how many times you debunk somebody's stupid narratives, it still just does not fucking resonate with them, right? Like, you cannot compare champions, pound for pound fighters with contenders and then wonder why people are more critical of champions and pound for pound fighters, right? We see this with Canelo Alvarez, right? Who's held to huge scrutiny because of what he's done and who he is. But somehow, when we talk about Tank Davis, he gets off scot-free. Yet this guy will talk about, the hate for black fighters. What are you talking about? The hate for black fighters. Canelo is not a black fighter. Yet he gets more hate than Tank Davis, and he's literally accomplished fucking buckets load more than Tank Davis. So we're going to break down some of these narratives he's pushing. And it's ironic because for a guy that, doesn't respect my channel, he definitely fucking listens to everything I put out. Because both videos he put out were in response to a live that I put out, which was talking about boxing this weekend. Yet he had nothing to say about the boxing that's happening this weekend, even though he will come out with a video praising Elijah Pierce for getting a victory this weekend. Even though he didn't talk about that fight, he didn't preempt it, he didn't big it up, but he'll come out and he'll talk about black excellence to give Elijah Pierce praise, even though he doesn't know who Elijah Pierce fought. But he didn't talk about the fights this weekend because, like many American YouTubers, these guys just aren't real boxing fans. They don't talk about boxing unless there's some sort of racial narrative they can attach to it. So ironically enough, out of this 2-hour live that I did, talking about all the fights happening this weekend and the big fight cards that are happening, in September this month, me literally being critical of Canelo Alvarez's card, talking about how for the amount of money you have to pay, it's very disappointing that this undercard is so uninteresting, so uninspiring, and that really the best fight on that card is Canelo Alvarez. And that's not even a great fight because obviously Berlanga is not the opponent people were asking for. But let's be fair, the only reason, of course, Canelo comes under this scrutiny is because he's Canelo. Berlanga is just as good as a Frank Martin, just as good as a David Morrell, just as good as tons of fighters that people are happy that fighters they support are fighting. Yet with Canelo, of course, it doesn't matter who he fights. He can literally fight 3 world champions back to back to back to become undisputed, and people say, well, he's just fighting white fighters. Even though those are the champions at 168. What black fighters do you want him to face when there's no black world champions at 168 pounds? Right? Is this an indictment towards white fighters, or is it an indictment towards black fighters who just can't compete at the 168 pound division? You tell me. But the reality is, this is the kind of criticism he constantly comes under. I made a comment, right, regarding potential fights that were happening. I don't remember the context exactly, but basically I threw out a jab towards JB because he's the guy that literally has been praising and pushing for an Errol Spence fight versus Funduro. Yet this is the same Errol Spence that just got bloody and beaten into submission by Terence Crawford. Has never fought at 154 pounds. Literally, this would be his first fight at 154, coming off of a career worst performance, getting fucking humiliated and demolished against Bud Crawford. Yet it's okay for him to get a world title fight because, well, it's an in-house PBC fight. And we know that's the reason why it's happening. And then, of course, they would love the winner to then fight Tim Tszyu, another in-house PBC fight. We know the way the sport operates. And I ain't hating on Spence getting the fight with Funduro, but when it's at the expense of making fights with a guy like Bud Crawford, who deserves the fights, not Errol Spence, who Bud Crawford just demolished, destroyed, basically sent into retirement, but yet he's the guy the PBC is pushing into this fight as if it's a fight that people are asking for, a fight that people wanted, and a fight that's deserved. Yet he then tried to criticize the fact that, Lomachenko got the fight, And I use the Spence as an example. You're okay when Spence gets a fight, but you're fucking in your feelings because Lomachenko gets it. And we know why he's in his feelings about Lomachenko, because Lomachenko is a white fighter. Whenever it's a non-black fighter, John will get in his feelings about it, right? And then show his clear, blatant, racist bias and fucking double standard. He says, well, Errol Spence was a unified champion. What does that have to do with fucking anything? You literally just got knocked the fuck out, destroyed by Bud Crawford, and you deserve a world title fight right off the bat, right? But Lomachenko, who was coming off of a win, earned a fight against Devin Haney. Most people feel he beat Devin Haney in a very competitive fight, yet he doesn't deserve a world title fight with George Kambosos, a vacant title, right? Like, Spence is not getting a vacant title. He's literally getting to fight a world champion, right? There's not like all the titles are vacant and he's one of 8 people who's getting an opportunity to fight for one of those vacant titles, which is exactly what happened at 135, right? That's why we have an unknown fighter as the WBO champion, why Shakur Stevenson, coming off of a poor performance, walked into a world title fight for the WBC, why Tank Davis didn't have to fight anybody but was elevated by the WBA into world title status with the email title, because literally you didn't beat anyone to earn a title. And Lomachenko fought George Kambosos for the IBF title, which was vacant as well. But yet he's the guy that was scrutinized and criticized. Why? Well, because of course he's a white guy, and you could say, well, the WBO guy's a white guy too. But nobody knows who he is, nobody cares, so it doesn't matter. That shows you the clear double standard. Because if you were so emotionally upset with Lomachenko getting a fight, then in truth, you should be upset with all these guys getting fights. Because none of them earned the opportunity, if you want to break it down that way. But with him, it has nothing to do with people getting a fight coming off of a loss, or guys fighting piss poor performances, performers, guys that don't deserve an opportunity, because we see tons of opportunities and examples of this in boxing, yet he never responds to it because he doesn't care. He just uses Lomachenko to push this racial fucking back and forth, right? The same way he did with Roman Gonzalez, with Kovalev, with Golovkin, with Manny Pacquiao. It's guys that are really, really admired and supported by non-black boxing fans. These are the guys that get the heavy scrutiny by a guy like JB, right? When Rolly Romero literally got knocked the fuck out by Tank Davis and then moved to 140 and walked right into a world title fight, he didn't care, right? Didn't care. Even though if you want to be consistent, you would be critical of that too, but he wasn't. Joe Cordina is coming off of a loss, walking into a world title fight with Shakur Stevenson. Do you think he's upset about that? Of course he's not. Because in this video, he's literally saying, well, if it was Shakur Stevenson, fighting a mediocre opponent coming off of a loss, imagine the criticism he would get. Well, this is the second opponent Shakur Stevenson is fighting to defend his WBC title, who literally came off of a loss. The Harvatunian guy had got beaten by Frank Martin, and now he's fighting Joe Cordina, who got knocked out at 130 by some fucking dude nobody ever heard of, right? But yet he's okay with Shakur fighting back-to-back losers, right? But imagine if Lomachenko fought a guy who was actually coming off of a loss. I mean, George Kambosos was coming off of a win. Whether you thought it was credible or not, I mean, that's up to you. But the reality is, on the books, it was a victory, right? And you're upset about that fight. Now he's upset that Zepeda is getting a George Kambosos fight. Because, well, imagine if it was Tank Davis or Shakur Stevenson, right? Oh, you mean world champions facing a guy coming off of a loss, giving him a world title fight. Yeah, people would be critical. Just like I've been critical in every single situation, unlike him, who picks and chooses when he wants to be upset. And primarily not when it's a black fighter he likes, only when it's a non-black fighter that he's trying to criticize and hate on. William Zepeda is in a unique position. He's not a world champion. He's not the face of boxing like Tank Davis. He's not a pay-per-view superstar who's going to charge you $85 to watch him fight George Kambosos. He's a guy that's a contender. he's in a unique position where I think he's number one ranked in every sanctioning body, which means he could fight Shakur Stevenson. But is that really the fight you want? He could fight Tank Davis, but Tank Davis doesn't really want that fight. He could try to make a Lomachenko fight. That's a fight that I think he was mandated by the IBF to get, so he could have got that fight. And obviously he could chase after the WBO champion, which would give him an opportunity to become a world champion. That's the most likely and most obvious thing he should do. That's actually what his promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, said that he wanted to do. Move towards that WBO world title, allow Cepeda to become a world champion. And then once he becomes a world champion, then like other world champions, he would be more criticized and scrutinized for taking on, lesser opponents. But at this point, he's still a contender. Facing George Kambosos, especially if he goes to Australia to do it, means he's going to get a career high payday to fight a guy that, in truth, he should beat, right? And just gives him another quality name on his resume and moves him towards another big fight down the road. But yet, that's something that should be criticized. Why? Well, because he's not fighting Shakur, right? Yet Shakur is fighting two guys coming off of losses, but he's not being criticized. Cepeda is being criticized, yet he's under no obligation to fight Cepeda. Shakur, as a champion, is obligated to fight good competition to defend his world title, just like Tank Davis. If you're going to be critical of Canelo Alvarez for fighting a lesser opposition, then be consistent. Then be critical of Tank Davis. But yet, this guy is not going to be critical of Tank Davis because he's going to baby Tank Davis, right? Just like he babies Errol Spence. Errol Spence deserves a world title fight coming off of a loss, a knockout loss. And he tries to justify that and sort of ignore the fact that literally Errol Spence was fucking annihilated in the ring. Lomachenko, he didn't have titles, so he doesn't deserve a world title fight, even if it's a vacant title, because he's still highly ranked by the sanctioning bodies. So because he's highly ranked, he's going to be one of the two fighters that gets an opportunity to fight for a fucking vacant title. Like, a guy like him is going to be critical of Lomachenko just because it's Lomachenko. But who do you think deserved the fight for the IBF title if not Lomachenko? You should just give the belt to Shakur. Well, why should Shakur or Tank Davis get the belt? Why should they get it? Tank Davis didn't beat anyone to become WBA champion. Shakur, who did he fight to become the WBA champion? De Los Santos? Has De Los Santos ever been ranked by any sanctioning body higher than Vasily Lomachenko? I don't think so. Because unlike De Los Santos, Lomachenko's been a world champion in 3 weight divisions. So for Spence, he deserves, everything he gets because he was a unified champion. But Lomachenko, who was a 3-belt unified champion, just like Errol Spence at 135, and has also been a champion in 2 other weight divisions, something Errol Spence has never done and inevitably never will do. He deserves everything he should do, whereas Lomachenko only deserves criticism. Just like Canelo Alvarez only deserves criticism. Yet Spence, Tank Davis, these guys can get a pass. The irony in the one statement he made when he talked about Cepeda and tried to shit on him, yet Cepeda is not a guy that people are calling the face of boxing. He's not a pay-per-view king. He's not a guy that's pound for pound, right? So obviously scrutiny for him isn't going to be the same as a guy like Tank Davis, who's literally a world champion. Just like criticism for Canelo Alvarez because he is a world champion. But the irony is he threw out Shakur, who, as I just pointed out, has now in line to fight 2 guys coming off of losses back to back. Imagine if Lomachenko fought 2 guys back to back coming off of losses. You would literally never fucking hear the end of it. Literally. It would be the biggest news ever. John Boxing would be fucking shitting his shorts in disgust with the fact that Lomachenko is allowed to fight 2 dudes coming off of losses and no one's fucking complaining it because people hate black fighters. Right? But yeah, the black fighter is doing it. No one even cares. No one says a word. Shakur is doing it. It's fine. No one's fucking in their feelings over it. And of course, John's going to ignore it. The other funny thing he said, he brought up Keyshawn Davis. Yet, if I remember correctly, he's the guy that was shitting on Keyshawn Davis opponents, criticizing the level of opponent that Keyshawn was fighting. It's ridiculous. And Keyshawn, as a matter of fact, is fighting a guy literally coming off of a loss in his next fight. I felt the guy deserved to win the fight, but the reality is he still got beat. And that's who Keyshawn Davis is fighting next. I think it's a great fight. It's ironic because that guy fought at 140, lost, and now he's fighting Keyshawn. So my question is he fighting Keyshawn at 135 or 140? I hope 135. But the truth is, so it's okay, Keyshawn is fighting a guy coming off of a loss, but Zepeda fighting a guy coming off a loss is fucking the end of the world. Oh my God. It's literally the worst thing that fucking ever happened. John's literally throwing his toys out of his pram because he's so fucking emotionally fucking fragile because of the news. Imagine. Oh my God. Like, for me, when I saw Zepeda's fighting Kambosos, it's not like I was excited about it, but we got to be honest. Why is Spence fighting Funduro? Money. Why is Zepeda fighting Kambosos? Money. There's no difference between these situations. Why is Canelo fighting Berlanga? Money. 90% of fights that fucking get made in the sport of boxing get made not because of the fights that should get made, but because of money. So why are you fucking always making about race when the only thing it's about is fucking green? And if you really follow the sport, you know that's what's going on. But still, with him, he's so fucking caught up with racism that's the only thing he can see, even when he's the one being the racist. That's the irony, right? So, you know, we had to listen to back-to-back videos, one shitting on Lomachenko, trying to justify once again that Errol Spence, unlike Lomachenko, deserves a world title fight coming off of a loss because he was a unified champion. Even though he got fucking demolished and people were asking that he should retire after that fight because that's how bad he got beat up in that fight. Lomachenko, on the other hand, literally, people felt he got robbed against Devin Haney. So him getting a world title fight off of a controversial loss is probably not the worst thing in the world. It's kind of the same as when you look at a guy like, what's his name? Oshaki Foster, who's getting a rematch with Consacao, right? He got beat. He lost his world title. So you think Consacao would jump forward and try to fight somebody to make more money. But he's being forced to rematch Oshaki Foster, like he should. Lomachenko should have got the opportunity to rematch Devin Haney, because with controversial fights, generally that's what happens. But he didn't. Oshaki is benefiting from that, like he should. He deserves a rematch because he was robbed against Consacao, right? Just like Bohachuk deserves a rematch with fucking Ortiz because he was robbed in that fight. Just like Lomachenko deserves a rematch with fucking Haney. Just like Kovalev deserved a rematch with Andre Ward, right? In close competitive fights that are seen as a little controversial, the rematch is usually what boxing fans push. But we know in these cases that only applies to black fighters, because believe it or not, this hate for black fighters that this guy continuously talks about is a myth, a fallacy. It's not true at all. The reality is it's truthfully a fucking hate towards non-black fighters, because regardless of how good you are as a non-black fighter, you're never going to get credit because you're not black. And because you're not black, inevitably you are just garbage, you're overrated, you're a hype job, you're media created, you're fucking protected, you know, whatever fucking slag you can throw at these guys, that's going to justify it, because there's no way in reality you could be better than a black fighter. You just couldn't. It's impossible, because we know black athletes are way superior than everybody else. That's the mindset John brings into these conversations. But yet he wants to call everyone else racist. Yet look at this superiority that he's trying to push towards the black race. And literally judge everyone because they're not black. But yet everyone else is a racist, but not John. This is the ridiculousness we hear here. We see this currently going on in the WNBA, where people are actually trying to shoehorn fucking Angel Reese into Rookie of the Year because she's a great rebounder. Yeah, she's a great rebounder. Congratulations. She probably is going to be the best rebounder in WNBA history. But that doesn't mean she's ever going to be a runner for MVP. Uh, she's never going to be leading her team to world champions. She's never going to be the face of fucking the WNBA if what she is just a rebounder. Caitlin Clark is the face of the WNBA. She's averaging fucking 23 and 10 since the Olympics, and her team is 5 for 6 in the last 6 games. She's literally doing what you should do if you are a person who's being touted as the Rookie of the Year. Leading the league in assists, top 10 in scoring, potentially by the end of the year, she may be top 5 in scoring and number 1 in assists, potentially having a 20, 10, and 5 average in her first year in the WNBA. That shit is fucking impressive. She's breaking tons of records already, just like Angel Reese is. But unlike Angel Reese, she's not just breaking rebounding records by pat-statting at the end of games that their teams are losing. She's literally winning games and breaking records for 30 points and 10 assists. The most 20 and 10 games for a season. The most assists by a rookie in a season. The most 3 points made by a rookie in a season. You know, multiple stats across multiple facets of her skill set. But the reason why she's getting hate is because she's white. And because of that, she just can't be better than Angel Reese. Because Angel Reese is black, so she must be better. Right? And when you break all this down, that's what it comes down to. It always has been. Right? The simple thing is this racist mentality from guys like JB. You see it in his community page. You see it in the videos that he constantly pushes. You know, you see by the channels he supports that it's all based on race. This is literally the only thing that impacts his view towards the sport of boxing. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. But, you know, it is what it is. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. And I'll talk to you next time. Peace out.